All right, everybody, welcome to episode 89 of the Slip and Weave podcast. I want to apologize in advance for my lovely singing voice. I've been very sick, so this is probably how I'm going to sound for the next couple of episodes, unfortunately. But I'm doing my best. The show must go on. Wanted to real quick just highlight Oshaki Foster's big win over Ray Vargas on Showtime. To me, this is a super impressive, underrated performance that's probably going to go under the radar, but Foster, a guy who lost a couple of fights early in his career, is on a 10-11 fight win streak, and legitimately earned this shot against Vargas. I think this was also legitimately a fight of the two best guys in their weight class, and Foster won it clearly. I know Vargas was upset with the decision, but ultimately, I think if he watches it back, he'll see that Foster ultimately won the majority of the rounds. I had it 8-4. I think the thing for me that was the most impressive about this fight is because of Vargas's height and his reach and his size, his opponents are always so desperate to get to him, and he's not that easy to get to. So they spend so much of the fight with like a full steam ahead mentality that when Vargas decides to let his hands go, a lot of times these guys are in range and try to just cover up and catch and shoot or catch and counter. What Foster did that was really impressive, even though he's 4 inches shorter, was he would just take a little half a step right out of range every time Vargas would throw. And it was like the taller man spent the whole fight reaching. And then when Foster wanted to step in on the inside and assert himself, he had the timing and the speed to do it without really getting a lot of counters from Vargas. Now, Vargas fought a decent fight too, man. He didn't get hit a lot. His defense looked sharp. I think that he could have I think he was too desperate to try to land. I think he should have just maintained that bubble of range, as I like to call it, and forced Foster to come inside of that as opposed to trying to go and get him. But I think a lot of that is attributed to the boxing IQ of Foster, and Foster, essentially forcing Vargas to come to him and waiting him out. And then in the middle rounds, in fact, I think Vargas won some of those rounds. He started connecting. He started getting a little more assertive. And then Foster closed the show great in the 12th. Like I said, I had it 116, 112. I think that Foster is legitimately the top guy at 130 pounds. And if you haven't heard of him, you need to go watch him, because I think this is a guy who's going to be around for a bit. He's got the defensive slickness. I mean, to all the youngins too, if you want a great exhibit on how to use the shoulder roll, go watch his performance in this fight, because there was a lot of times where he was, making Vargas fall just short because he's using the shoulder roll the right way in the right range. Just a really impressive performance. I think Foster is a guy with the boxing IQ to be a handful for anybody at 130. Emmanuel Navarrete's looked particularly vulnerable his last couple of fights. We haven't seen Valdez come back yet since the Stevenson fight and his injury. So we're not entirely sure what we have with Oscar Valdez still. I think what we know based on this fight is that Oshaki Foster just beat a 36-0 guy in his prime, who's one of the best at his weight class, and did it not easily, but did it relatively wide. I had it 8-4, but I think 9-3, maybe even 10-2 would have been fair, depending on, how you scored the flip a coin round. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens for Oshaki Foster. And 130 pounds is a little bit open and vacant right now as far as who the top guy is. I feel like he's assumed that role. So very impressive performance. Also on the card, Mario Barrios makes his return from 2 straight defeats to Gervonta Davis, as well as Keith Thurman. He gets a stoppage win over Giovanni Santiago. I thought that, obviously the way this fight was framed was it was 2 guys coming off of 2 consecutive losses, a bit of a crossroads fight, maybe even a fight between 2 guys that are at similar points in their careers. But it didn't look like that, man. Barrios looked like the more confident, assertive fighter. I thought his hand speed looked good. I thought his body language looked good. And again, for a welterweight or a junior welterweight, he's a very tall, long, fast guy. I think people forget that he's only 27 years old. So these fights against Thurman and Davis, were very much, in his mid-20s. He's still learning. He's still growing. He had the balls to take those fights and take them back to back. I think that says a lot about his character. And it looks, at least to me, it looks like, he's somebody who's learning from defeat, who's getting better from defeat and getting motivated by defeat. And he was just a much bigger, stronger, more dominant fighter than Santiago, who was trying to put up a decent fight and showed a lot of heart, but just was in many ways outclassed and in a level that, he wasn't quite comfortable in. So I think this is a great win for Barrios. I think he's probably a guy with options at welterweight, particularly in this unfortunate, A side, B side era. There's going to be a big name welterweight that needs a high level dance partner. Off rip, for me, the fight that I would like to see him in that I think is appropriate is a fight with Alexis Rocha. Obviously Rocha on the win streak since the Rashidi Ellis fight, but I think he's looking for a credible win to kind of put him in position for a bigger fight. And I think for Mario, a win over Alexis, I think sort of puts him right back in the mix. This win was a good comeback win. I don't know if this win puts him in the mix, you know what I'm saying? But a win over Alexis Rocha, I think puts him back in position to be, legitimately in consideration for a big fight. So great win for Mario Barrios. My guest this week is light heavyweight contender Richard VanSiclen. He fights next weekend on ProBox TV. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, welcome to episode 89 of the Slip and Weep podcast. My guest this week, Richard VanSiclen, fights February 22nd on ProBox TV. Richard, how you been, my guy?
Yes, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you for coming on, bro. As I said, you fight on ProBox February 22nd against, I believe his name is Manuel Gallegos. What do you know about the opponent? What kind of fight are we expecting? Just break down what you expect next week.
Yeah, so from what I've seen, just from the internet, stuff like that, he is a Mexican fighter. He has 20 wins that are on record with 1 loss. Tough opponent. Definitely going to be a step-up fight for both of us. I'm excited. I'm doing this. Been doing it for a long time, and these are the kind of fights that I've been looking forward to. So definitely a good opponent, and something that we've been looking for him and trying to get for the last 6 months, and finally got a guy that would take a fight. So I'm excited for that.
And for the fans who don't know, I always like to just let people introduce themselves, let the people know who you are, where you're from, accolades, accomplishments, achievements.
Right. Yep. So I'm the Vibes VanSiclen. Started boxing when I was 19 years old at the University of Washington. A little bit late start for most. Before that, though, lifetime athlete, football, basketball, track. Walked on the football team, broke my ankle, and then decided I wanted to go to boxing. And boxing has been everything for me the last 10 years. And from winning a national championship in college in 2015 to going to the Olympic trials to turning professional, the last 6 years have just been hard work, grinding, and finally getting to the point to where I'm a main card on a decent show. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah. So how did you find it? Did you just find it while you were at college? Did your college provide some?
Yeah. So I was living with a few guys that were actually boxing, and it was a club sport at my college. It was not like the school funded or anything like that. So these guys had been doing it like the whole year. And my freshman year, I just kind of was just like done with football and just kind of looking for that next outlet. And boxing was available, and I tried out, not knowing what to expect really. And my head coach for college was a military guy. And so you come in not really knowing what to expect, and it's just straight boot camp. Like, you're not even throwing punches. They're just seeing who has heart, and they're going to teach you boxing. And I didn't know anything about boxing, but I love working out, and it was amazing workouts. And they saw something in me that I didn't see at the time because I just didn't know what I had. And they saw it, and they were right. So here we are, 10 years later, and we're undefeated, taking big fights and making a name for ourselves in this sport, which, it's not easy to do that. Even after all these years, now finally I'm getting the recognition that we deserve because we've been putting in the work, but that's what it takes.
That's what's crazy about boxing, right? Is it's not the same as basketball or football, where it's very difficult to have any amount of success if you start that late. But with boxing, there's more so certain things that you can't teach. Like, there obviously is things you can teach, like technique and how to throw a punch, defense.
Yep.
But like the power and certain levels of athleticism, you're not necessarily teaching that. What do you think is kind of your X factor as a guy who came into the game a little later?
Oh, the X factor is just having that like tenacity that, not a lot of people have. Like, you know what I mean? And I'm tough as hell. Like, I can take punches. I know I can do that, but for me, it's like I'm gonna outthink you. I'm gonna be smarter than you. Like, you might throw a punch, land it, but you're not gonna land it again. And like, I'm just gonna come back with something different. And my ability to adapt to situations, to different fighters, different styles, that's what sets me apart. I feel like a lot of fighters are one dimensional. They're really good at what they do, but sometimes that doesn't always work. And styles make fights. So if you're not able to adjust and adapt, that's going to be harder for you down the line if you find somebody who can adapt and change. And I'm definitely one of those guys that I can fight either way. I can fight southpaw, I can fight orthodox.
I was going to ask you about that too. Have you always?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that because I don't always show. I don't have to show it because a lot of guys that I fight, I don't have to show it. So, but I can and I will if I have the ability to adapt is definitely something that what is one of my X factors for sure.
One of the things I noticed in your last fight against Lopez was that you were kind of switching stances. And when somebody can do that well, somebody like Terrence Crawford or Jose Pedraza, those are kind of two examples I thought of. That can be really tricky to deal with. Is that something you've always done? Is that something you picked up? Did you do that at the beginning and someone said, yo, cut that shit out, but then you were still good at it? Like, how did that play into your game?
Yeah. So it's definitely something that I've always been able to do because growing up, I've done a lot of different sports and activities. And so growing up, actually, I used to skateboard. And, before it was cool, before kick push, before, it was cool for Black people to skateboard. Like, I was doing that. And when I skateboard, I'm regular footed, right? So that's orthodox stance, basically. And so I have really good balance as an orthodox. And just in general, I'm ambidextrous. A lot of people don't know that. So I'm ambidextrous. So when I play basketball, I shoot with my right hand. So just having all these different accolades, like of activities and stuff like that, it allows me to use both hands, both stances without a problem. And so it's always something that I've been able to do, and I feel comfortable either way. It just, not something I've had to really show.
Can you shoot a basketball with both hands?
What's that?
Can you shoot a basketball with both hands?
Yeah,
That's
actually.
Crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I'm throwing a football. I can throw super far with my right hand. I just don't have any accuracy with my right hand when I throw a football, but I can throw it super far. But when I throw a football, I throw it with my left hand mostly.
That's a big edge to have, bro. To have that ambidexterity and then also to have the balance you were talking about from skateboarding. I never related that to boxing, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I never really thought about it. I was like, why do I feel so comfortable? And it made sense because I used to skateboard all the time, and when you're on a skateboard going downhill or doing ollies and stuff like that, just that balance, the shifting the weight is definitely key to having balance in boxing for sure.
Your last fight against Hakeem Lopez was that your best win so far? Would you say as a pro?
I would say it's my best one on paper. Definitely, without a doubt. You have an undefeated guy in his hometown, in his home promotion, backyard. All the odds are stacked against you going into that fight. And You have a guy that they think he's going to beat. It's all it is. A side, B side type thing, and you go in there and you outbox him. You know what I mean? And beat him. Decisively. It wasn't close. When I think their promotion tried to say it was close narrowly, but it wasn't. Like when you're in the fight that it's a good fight. It's close, but in your head like you're winning the fight. So I definitely never felt at any point in that fight that I was like losing or behind. I definitely felt like they were close rounds, but I was winning and I was landing the punches that actually counted, and you could see it throughout the fight. When there's blood splatting everywhere, and a fighter's not fighting like themselves no more because they're getting hit like they've never been hit before. So definitely my best win without a doubt.
It was definitely a 6-2 kind of fight. That's how I saw it. There, especially in the later rounds, it felt like you found a rhythm. Maybe it was like the 5th or the 6th round where you found like that second gear, and it felt like he started to kind of tire out. Were you doing that consciously, or was that just instinct?
Yeah. So what I found is in my career, I get better as the round goes on because my cardio has. I've never really faced anybody with better cardio than me, and that's in sparring too. And I've sparred the best of the best in sparring. I get better as the rounds go on. So definitely something that happens just from practice, but that's just the way I'm built. So I can start fast, I can finish strong, and do both of them. It just depends on what's in front of me.
Since we're roughly the same age,
yeah,
you probably grew up watching similar fighters. What is it like having 3 living legends in Roy Jones, Tarver, and Paulie commentating your fights?
Yeah, what's funny about that is that Roy Jones, like, before I even started boxing, I knew who Roy Jones was just because, for one, his rap songs, and then two, like, he has the best highlight. Like, I don't care. Mayweather might say he's the best to go, but Roy Jones has the best highlights that you could ever watch. So even if you don't even like boxing, you just watch. You're like, that's different. That guy's different. So for me, it's like full circle because I grew up before I even started boxing. Before I even knew what like boxing was, I knew who Roy Jones was. So that was really cool. Full circle, having him actually commentate my fight. I fought on one of his shows a few years ago, so that was cool because he had a promotion in Washington State that I fought on. But having him actually commentate was funny. Little bit of a hater though. Like, I'm not gonna lie, you could tell that he wasn't on my team to begin with, but then he kind of jumped on. But Tarver from the get, he knew he's a southpaw, so he knew. And then Mike Goldberg, his voice is iconic. He kind of felt where I was coming from the beginning too. So having Paulie Malignaggi as well. Having all 3 of those, legendary guys commentating my fight, and then I think they had Manuel doing it in Spanish, right? Or yeah, that was cool. So having all those guys just commentate my fight is huge because this is why you do this. You want to get the recognition from guys that you grew up watching that were your icon and legends. And so that was a huge milestone for me. And then recognizing what I'm doing, because when you're just watching the fight as a fan, sometimes you don't know the little small things. And when they see the little small things that you're doing, and then they catch their mistakes. Like, there was a point where they're like, oh, he's not comfortable on the inside, which I'm very comfortable on the inside, fighting on the inside. Do I like to fight on the inside? I don't like to get hit, so not really. But they recognize that I'm still dominating him, after they made a mistake. Oh, he doesn't, So that was cool seeing them, like, actually get it right. Because a lot of times when they commentate, you're like, you're not getting it right. Like, you're not seeing the bigger picture. And those guys are such experts in the game. They know the small little things that you're doing. So that was cool as well.
Right. And they know also, Paulie may be seeing something, and it may actually look that way. And then the fighter changes it up and he'll actually acknowledge that.
Exactly. They see what kind of instructions you got in your corner. And like, yeah, now he's doing what he's just, so that's when it's good commentation. Because a lot of times when you have these guys that don't know anything about boxing, or they're just newbies, which I've had, they're not even going to be able to keep up with what's going on in the fight. They're just talking about stuff that you said. But there's one thing with saying something and then actually doing it. And then when you actually do it and they catch that's really cool. So the commentation, I don't know, it doesn't get much better than the guys that they have for the show. And I think they just added Chris Algieri.
He's fucking great.
Which is funny because what I have in common with Chris Algieri is I'm pretty sure he, a few years ago, was doing nutrition for Daniel Jacobs. And that's like the first time that I ever heard about Chris Algieri was, he was kind of like on the last end of his career, but he was so good with nutrition that he was helping other fighters. And I thought that was really cool. And so that's kind of how I got familiar with Chris Algieri.
Yeah, bro. I would imagine that having fucking, Roy Jones, who's like literally the cheat code, and then you have the guy that beat the cheat code sitting next to him commentating too. Like that must be incredible opportunity for prospects and for young fighters, as they're coming up.
Absolutely, man. Like that's the thing too, is just having those guys give you the recognition, like you said, is different and a huge opportunity, and that's why we do it.
Where do you feel like you sit? Do you feel like you sit at light heavyweight? Do you feel like you sit at super middleweight? Which weight class kind of benefits you more? Because I saw on BoxRec you're listed as a light heavyweight.
Yeah, so I'm at a unique weight. I really wish I could make my own weight class. I'm not even gonna lie, because if I could, nobody would be messing with me. But I'm like kind of in between, like the light heavyweight and super middleweight. I definitely can make super middleweight, which a lot of fighters don't do that. They don't start at a heavier weight and go down, in their career. Like maybe when they're going from amateur, they go to pro and they drop down. But that's something I've been able to do just by sheer like discipline and diet. I studied nutrition in college. And so for me, it's like, as long as I have a good amount of time, I can make pretty much either one of those weight classes. But I really like the 172 range. That's kind of where I like to be. But I definitely can see myself winning a little bit faster a world title at light heavyweight, just because how stacked the super middleweight division is, and there's some guys that already have a few more years of experience there. Not saying I couldn't beat them, because I know that I can beat anybody at this point in time in my career, but it's just politically, you know how this goes. It's not like you're just, you know what I mean? Like even after I win this fight, I'm 14-0. You know what I mean? Like there's other guys that are 25-0 that still haven't gotten that chance. So I kind of know that in terms of where I stand, I think light heavyweight would probably lead to a faster world title, and that's what I'm doing this for. So
there's really at the moment there's really like two top guys at light heavyweight, and it's obviously Bivol and Beterbiev. Who do you see as the top dog, and how do you see a fight between them playing out?
Oh, that's literally the best fight in boxing, if you ask me. Like there's not a better fight than those two guys fighting right now. If they wait even a year to have that fight, it's too late, because you got a guy who is knocking everybody out at the top of his game. He's older, so if you wait a year from now, it's too late. And you got a guy who beat Canelo Alvarez. There's no other fight for him to take that makes sense. If he really wants to be the best, and if he wins that fight, if Bivol beats Beterbiev, I think he's the best boxer in a really long time, because you got a guy who beat Canelo, you got a guy who beat literally a monster, a guy who dropped from heavyweight to light heavyweight and hasn't not knocked out anybody he's fought. That's incredible features. Like, so yeah, that's definitely the best fight. I think honestly, if Bivol outboxes him, which he really could, I think he would win the fight. But we all know what happens in like 9, 10, 11, round 12. He just knocks you out, and you're just like, it doesn't even look like it's like that crazy of a punch, but he just hits so hard that that fight plays out exactly like all of his other fights. I think he loses 9 rounds, and then he knocks him out in the 10th. Like that's literally how it would go down, I think. Or Bivol outboxes him.
The thing I always say about Beterbiev is like the fight's always going one way until he lands a clean body shot. And then whatever movement or whatever generally the other guy starts to slow down. What did you think of his last fight against Anthony Yard? Because I know people were, I thought it was going to be a little bit quicker, but ultimately Beterbiev kind of kicked his ass. Yard put up a good fight. What did you think of Beterbiev in that fight? Did you see that as him on the decline, or did you just think Yard put up a good
No,
fight?
I thought he fought one of his best fights, honestly. He fought a guy who really brought it and really, really boxed, and he did well. You know what I mean? Like it's that level of competition is so high that like if you don't give that guy credit and you're trying to,
say that he's older, and it doesn't matter. Like that's just him at his best. I think you're seeing a guy who literally knocked out a guy who had all the right to win that fight, but it just didn't go his way because like you said, you got caught with one of those shots, and it's one of those shots that's the X factor in all of his fights because you got what was it? Was it Marcus Brown,
Yep.
Rajer, whatever his name is? Both those guys were outboxing him, doing really well, like doing exactly what they're supposed to do, and then they get caught in like the 10th round, and it's over, bro. It's like not even. It's not like oh he's gonna survive. It's fucking over. It's done.
He's like Deontay Wilder with boxing skills.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It really is. And it's not as fancy and it's not as fun to watch because you're like you said, majority of the round you're like this dude's losing, like he's getting outboxed, and then all of a sudden just claps you with the shot, and you're like, damn, it's over. Game over.
And he's doing little shit to break you down slowly, slipping little body shots in, like that jab to the body. There's little things he's did, the mental pressure, he's doing little things to tire you out.
Right. Yeah, and it's like no boxer has been able to put it. So that would be like you said, the testament to Bivol if he could actually get in there, outbox him, and survive all 12 rounds. That's the best fight in boxing, without a doubt, because you have a guy who has a feat that nobody else has. You know what I mean? There's other fights that probably two more skilled fighters, like in terms of boxing, but that's literally you got a puncher versus a boxer, and two guys at their prime right this very second. Why would you not have that fight? But
any thoughts on Canelo potentially fighting John Ryder?
So what's funny about that is John Ryder's last fight. I was actually supposed to be the sparring partner for what was it, Zach Parker, and he should have had me there. He fucked up, didn't have me there. And but anyways, yeah, like just I don't know. John Ryder is a good fighter. He is. He's like a I don't know, like a knockdown version of Canelo himself. Really, he's not like as skilled, but I mean, it's at this point, I think Canelo is on the decline. It just seems like he's not going to be able to get those absolutely like a Bivol. He's not going to be able to beat a Bivol. You know what I mean? So if I was him, the John Ryder fight, why not? If you can sell the tickets and it's in your hometown, at least go. And you can make some bread, and that's what you want, then great. Legacy wise, I don't know. You got to you know who he has to fight. You know who he has to fight if he really wants to. And if it's in May, come on, man. Like Mexican versus Mexican, we all want to see that fight. But he's tiptoeing away from that fight. If you're gonna fight the best, you got to fight the best, and that's David Benavidez at that weight class. You know what I mean? So it's without a doubt that he's creeping away from that and going and fighting a John Ryder. Which, yeah, it makes sense because it makes money, right? You got a guy who's big in Europe, but does it do people really want?
And David's got his hands full right now himself.
Oh, he does, yeah, and that's a big fight, and I think the winner of that fight deserves a big fight after that. Like, there's not even a question. Like, and it should be a Canelo fight. You know what I mean? It should be that. That should be. But that we all know how this all plays out. It's not going to be probably won't happen. But that's the fight I think Canelo should take, and everybody would want to watch. This is an entertainment sport. Like boxing is entertainment. And I think the most entertaining fights should happen, and I don't know how we organize that to make it easier.
This is kind of a weird tangent, but I remember seeing an interview a really long time ago where Shane Mosley was talking about when he fought at lightweight and welterweight, he would hit guys and it would move them, or it would push them back, or it would knock them down. And then when he moved up to junior middle and he fought Winky Wright, it was like I was punching a sandbag. Like it didn't move him, it didn't affect him. I was swinging as hard as I could and it just wasn't doing anything. And it kind of felt like that's what happened with Canelo when he fought Bivol. Like he's like, my punches are just not having the same impact they normally do. So I guess I do wonder if he's on the decline or if he just fought a much naturally bigger guy who wasn't really sweating his punches and had great defense. But I think also the Golovkin fight was so unexciting that's part of why people feel that way.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said. It's the weight class. Like, there's weight classes for a reason, and I think you got a Russian guy, who's 190, easily walking around. You're literally probably 175 walking around, at your heaviest,
Right.
and you're a lot shorter and smaller. Like you just can't generate that much power. That's why I don't, see him wanting to fight a guy like Benavidez, who's like 6'3", 6'2.5", who's just big, bro. Like he's just a big. I've sparred him multiple times, so I know how much bigger he is than Canelo. And Canelo's fast, quick, can box, but you got a guy who's just bigger than you. His bone structure's bigger. You know what I mean? He can take those punches and he can hit you way harder than you can hit him. So it's like, you know what I mean? I see what you're saying in terms of like he might not be on the decline. I think he's just punching out of his. He's not punching out of his weight class, and he's fighting in a weight class.
Triple G was so passive that it was just I felt like they were both waiting for the other to make the fight, and it didn't happen. They both kind of looked like shit.
Right.
It just wasn't that. But I think that we're so used to seeing him like when he hits guys, it fucks them up. It either puts them down, they're hurt. Right. Something happens when he lands punches. And with Bivol, even when he was landing to the body and whatever, it just didn't do anything to him.
No, and you got a guy, styles make fights, right? You got a guy whose style is perfect for a Mexican type fighter who is boxing and like he's gonna hit you and he's gonna get out and you're gonna throw. You might land some, but you're gonna miss so many and you're gonna get tired because you're doing the same thing and you're not adjusting to what is in front of you. And that's exactly what you saw there with a guy like Bivol, who's just a great boxer. His IQ is super high, and he's doing the same thing because it works. Like boxing works. That's the reason why the sport is called boxing, because he's boxing. You know what I mean? Like you could be a heavy puncher, but if you're not landing those heavy shots and you're getting tired and you're getting countered from a boxer, like it's gonna do its toll on you. And I think that style is just terrible for Canelo, especially terrible for a guy who's bigger. Like if it was the same size, it probably wouldn't even be that much of a factor. But the size difference, the style difference, all culminated in him just not being able to make it happen.
Talk to me about sparring with David Benavidez. What was that like, and what were some of the lessons for you?
Well, I've sparred with him this camp, and I sparred with him every other camp as well. I sparred with him a lot, and in terms of going for the first time sparring him, and then now it's just like when you go to a different level of fighting, you start to understand that there's levels. And when I was first doing it, I was new as a pro, and I wasn't even I didn't really know what to expect. You got a guy, oh, what's a world champion? And you get in there, oh, that's what the world champion is. Okay. And so now it's like you understand that you have to adjust your style and make your boxing perfect. And if you make one mistake, you're going to get caught. But being in there with him is just, it's good. It keeps you alive. It makes you feel like you're really doing something. Because when you're doing well, you're like, wow, like this works. This works on the best in the world. It's going to work on probably anybody. You know what I mean? So for me, the lessons taken away from that were, do what I do good and understand that like if you make a mistake with somebody who's that good, you're going to get caught. And so you gotta be really smart and be on your A game at all times. And come ready. And it's a lesson you learn with anybody else, but it's just to a different level. And that kind of sparring at that gym in Seattle. So it's Benavidez Sports. They got probably the biggest Mexicans in the world there. You know what I mean? Like just legitimate. You walk around like that. All these Mexicans are bigger than me, and I'm big. So it's like that's crazy. He posted a picture on his Instagram. You can look at it. I'm in there, and you just look around his brother and all these other guys, just big Mexican dudes. Like, you don't find Mexicans that are that big. It's kind of funny.
Where do you feel like you fit in at light heavyweight right now? And if you had to kind of map out, your ideal 2023, what would that look like for you?
Yeah, I think I'm one of the best in the world. Just boxing wise, IQ wise, style wise, marketability wise. Like, come on, like you're not getting somebody who does all this, looks like this. You're just not getting that, like at all. So in terms of where I sit myself, I definitely see myself in top 10. And I think with this year, I'm going to prove that. So this fight, and then we got some other stuff lined up, some really big stuff lined up. So I think by like summer, I think you'll see me break top 15 easily, maybe top 10. And again, it's just being able to get those fights and getting the people excited about those fights. And I think I'm an exciting fighter. I'm fun. Like I do, I don't have to do this. Like I do this because I love it and I'm good at it. And I definitely, like I said, I see myself in being in the top 10 and if not being the best and at the end of this year, if Bibble and those guys don't fight. So slide in there, take a fight last minute, hit me up, call me.
Well, Richard, I really appreciate your time, bro. Is there anyone, anything, anywhere that you want to shout out before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, man. Definitely want to shout out my coaches because I wouldn't be here without my coaches. Definitely have some of the best coaches in the world. They've been my coaches since college, and so I want to give them a shout out. Yeah, I just really hope everybody tunes in on Wednesday, the 22nd. Follow me on my Instagram, Team VanSiclen, and that's about it, man. Yeah.
Well, once again, I really appreciate your time, Richard. Richard fights February 22nd, ProBox TV. Definitely check that out, guys. Richard, I appreciate you, bro. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Dakota. Appreciate you, bro.